This is the brand new V6 Kraton, and this is the world's strongest wood. And today we're going to find out if this plywood can survive where metal and plastic fail. This is a piece of aircraft-grade Baltic birch, and pound for pound, it can actually be stronger than steel. To test that claim, today we're going to be replacing the chassis, shock towers, braces, wheels, and maybe even gears on this Kraton with wood, and then we're going to bash it. And to make that job much, much easier, we're going to be cutting everything out using nothing but light. Of course, before we get started, we need to do a baseline bash on this Kraton, and before we do that, we need to put it together because this thing's in pieces from a bunch of other experiments we've done. I have to say I'm really excited about this video. I've been wanting to experiment with high-strength wood for a long time, and the wood we're using is a special type of thin laminate plywood that's been used in airplanes for decades, though I genuinely have no idea how it's going to hold up in this application. No matter what happens though, this is going to be a really fun experiment, and we're definitely going to be learning something today. And we're definitely going to run into some challenges, such as how to deal with the kick-up on this stock chassis, and how we're going to mount wooden wheels, which I definitely have not figured out yet. Of course, every good experiment has a control, so let me button this thing up, and let's go take it for a bash. In case you didn't notice, we went ahead and hit 50K in the last video, and that means we've got some really cool giveaways coming. Today's giveaway is going to be a full RTR new in the box 1/8 scale buggy. I'll give you some more information about that later, but yeah, this thing seems to be running just fine. I accidentally put some LP tires on here, but that's okay. We'll switch to the full-size tires once we start doing the experiments. I'm definitely curious to see how this wood's going to hold up. I do want to mention that even though I said it's stronger than steel by weight, that doesn't mean it's actually stronger than steel. It just means that it's really, really light. It is very strong though, and in some cases can even reach a similar strength as aluminum, which again is why they used them in airplanes. It's light and strong. So I'm really curious to see if it's going to hold up as a chassis, if it's going to hold up as wheels, and if it's going to hold up as shock towers and maybe even gears. This thing seems to be running just fine, so I don't know about you, but for me, it's time to get some wood. The first step, of course, is to go ahead and free our chassis from the rest of the car. Of course, with all the screws going into our handy-dandy organization cardboard. And now that we have a bare Kraton chassis, yes, I know this isn't the chassis we were using a minute ago. Don't ask, it's a long story. We need to go ahead and make a digital version of this. In order to do that, I'm just going to take a picture of it from high up to try to reduce the parallax error. Parallax error is an issue that happens when you take a picture from a single point, but that point is further away from certain parts of the thing you're taking the picture of, so you end up with a distorted image. The further away we get, the less that distortion occurs. So we're going to take our picture with a measuring tape in it, and that measuring tape's important because now that we import it into Fusion 360, we can use the marks on the measuring tape to actually calibrate the size of the picture. With that calibrated, I can duplicate the outline and all of the holes in the chassis, which gives us a nice digital version. In order to turn that drawing into reality, we first need to talk about the absolute science fiction magic that is cutting things with light. This is the 40-watt cutting head from the new Creality Falcon 2 laser cutter, and whereas I'm sure you've heard of laser cutters before, have you ever really thought about what they can do? The entirety of the lighting you see here on this studio is also probably about 40 watts, but instead of being spread out and diffuse like you see here, a laser module like this takes it and puts it down into a teeny tiny little point. Essentially, this module is putting out the same amount of energy that you see here, but the laser concentrates it down into such a fine point that it heats the material it's cutting up to thousands of degrees and just vaporizes it. And as powerful and useful as this 40-watt Creality laser is, as far as laser cutting goes, this is actually fairly weak. A laser cutter like this, which you can see cutting metal, is actually thousands of watts. But as we're going to see, something like this is super useful for us hobbyists, but first, we've got to put the Creality Falcon 2 Pro together. The Falcon 2 Pro comes very well packed from the factory and is already mostly assembled, so there's not too much we need to do. Starting with these upper rails, we're just going to install this cross piece, screw it in place. This cross piece also houses the included camera, which makes things really easy to align before you cut them. This laser cutter also has a full enclosure, which we're going to go ahead and assemble now by sliding these sheets into the frame, installing the front and rear brackets to retain them, and then testing the sliding cover, which seems to move very smoothly. Then we just need to install and check the drawer that goes in the bottom to catch debris. Install all the slats where we actually put our material. That looks really, really nice. These slats are adjustable. And this thing's almost done. We just need to finish up by installing both our side pieces, installing all the screws that hold them in. This also holds the top to the rest of the chassis. And now the last step's going to be installing the electronics, including this laser cutter head, into the machine. Before we do that though, we need to talk about safety. The energy coming out of the end of this nozzle is enough to blind you if you get a reflection of a reflection of a reflection of it for a millisecond. Obviously, Obviously, the Falcon 2 Pro comes with a full enclosure, which is one of its biggest advantages, and there are a bunch of safeties on the enclosure, but you only get one set of eyes, which is why these also come with laser safety goggles. There's one really important thing we need to do with these laser safety goggles, though, before we get started. Now listen, I'm not saying those glasses aren't any good, but I personally wouldn't trust them. You only get one set of eyes, and a US company called J-Tech Photonics sells really nice laser safety glasses that don't cost a ton of money. These glasses have been batch tested to make sure that they're going to protect your eyes. And my recommendation is to contact them, let them know what you have, and let them tell you what glasses you need to protect yourself. Now, of course, beyond eye protection, which that enclosure helps with immensely, we also have fire protection and lens occlusion protection. This machine should detect if your material actually catches on fire, and it can tell you if there's a problem with your lens. Those are really good safety features to protect both you and the machine. All right, enough about safety. Let's install this and see just how strong that wood really is. With the model created, I'm going to import it into Lightburn. This is the software we're actually going to use to control the laser cutter. This isn't a free piece of software, but it is by far the best software. If you're going to use a laser cutter, I definitely recommend using Lightburn. Before we cut this out on an expensive piece of wood, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out on paper. The beauty of cutting on paper is that it's really, really fast and you get an exact representation of what the end result's going to be. And this is what we ended up with. As you can see, matching it up to the chassis, it matches up pretty much perfectly. I did have to make a couple of revisions, but this one looks like it's going to work, so let's go ahead and cut it out in wood. With its built-in enclosure and built-in bed, this laser cutter is really, really simple. I've operated a bunch of different laser cutters over the years, and this one is my favorite. And now we have an exact replica of the stock chassis, just in aircraft plywood. There are a couple of limitations to this, the biggest one being that the front of the plywood is flat, and the front of the aluminum chassis actually kicks up. This kick up creates positive caster angle in the front suspension, which helps keep your steering stable. And without it on here, not only is the steering going to be less stable, but things aren't actually going to attach properly. So we'll just take a few measurements here on the front end, model that angle up in CAD, 3D print that model out, and now we have a little angled spacer we can put in between the chassis and the front end. And with that spacer in place, this thing's ready to mount up. For maximum strength on this, we're going to skip the flat head countersunk screws, and instead we're going to use button head screws and these big fender washers. If you do ever need to buy screws, I always recommend getting an assortment on Amazon. Getting one of these really isn't much more expensive than just buying the individual screws, and you end up with a lot of extras so you don't have to buy them next time. Well, it looks kind of silly, but I think that's going to be pretty darn strong. And yeah, guys, I think this is going to work. I don't know if it's going to even last one jump, but we're going to find out. Let me get the rest of this bolted up. And there we go, guys, the world's first wood chassis Arrma Kraton. That actually worked really, really well. And I know some of you guys are going to say I ruined the look of the wood with all these washers, or even that using them is cheating. To that I say, and now, after checking to make sure everything moved smoothly, I realized I made a mistake. I created room in that 3D printed spacer for the differential gear, but I didn't make room for it back here. And as you can see, there is a little divot in this chassis, and now this back differential is completely locked up, so a little bit of modification necessary. Fortunately, the diff gear left a nice little witness mark, and since this is wood, this is going to be an easy fix. And after quickly channeling my inner Bob Vila, or maybe Dull Beaver, let's see if it fits now. There we go, much better. And from the top, you could almost be forgiven for thinking this is just a normal Kraton. Of course it's not, so let's go see if this thing actually works. Just to clarify, this is a basic functionality test. I'm not trying to break anything right now. I just want to make sure that I didn't do anything stupid, that there's not any unexpected results from making the chassis out of wood. And so far, seems to be working okay. Had a little stick there, but yeah, it feels about the same as I would expect. I don't really feel anything different. Again, we're not trying to break it right now. We're just trying to make sure that it works, that it runs, and then when we get everything, including the wood wheels and maybe even a wood gear, we can actually test it out and see where the weak points are. And yeah, this seems to be running just fine. Well, guys, this is going better than I thought it would, and I think this might actually work. Now things are gonna get a little bit more serious, though. Because now we're moving from things that I was pretty sure was going to work more and more towards things I'm pretty sure aren't going to. Just like with the chassis, we're going to create a model of this front shock tower, and then we're going to import the model into Lightburn, but this time, instead of using a computer directly connected to the Creality laser cutter, we're going to use one of its awesome party tricks, and that's being able to cut using just an SD card. Following the procedure in the manual for the laser cutter, we're going to make sure it's the only file on the root directory of the SD card. We're going to put it in the machine, home it, hit the frame button to make sure that it's going to cut where we want it to, and then just cut it out. And just like that, we've got a shock tower made out of plywood. I also went ahead and made the front brace out of wood. I used the exact same procedure I did on the shock tower, including using the SD card instead of a computer connected to the laser cutter. I think I prefer the computer, but it's nice to have the option. I'm a little concerned about this front brace because it's not really as wide as the original brace, and I couldn't fit two in here, so this might end up being our weak point. Speaking of weak points, I don't think I explained why this is the strongest wood in the world. Not only is it made really well, but this is plywood. Normal wood has a wood grain, which means it's a lot stronger in one direction than in another. Plywood laminates multiple layers of that wood and alternates the direction of the grain, so it's more uniformly strong. High quality plywood like this actually has 5 layers or more, while lower quality plywood will only have 3 layers, meaning it's not quite as strong. Whether or not this is going to be strong enough to handle serious bashing, we're going to find out. And there we go, that doesn't look too bad. Now let's go make sure this isn't going to immediately explode, and then things are gonna get really interesting. Okay, just like last time, we're doing a basic functionality test. I just wanna make sure I didn't do anything stupid. I wanna make sure everything works. We're not gonna get massive air. We'll get a little bit of air, but just wanna make sure everything's gonna work for our final big test once we get everything made out of wood. And to be honest with you, this doesn't feel any different than I would expect it to. I am gonna say that the front shock tower is probably gonna end up breaking on us in our first big crash, but I suspect the gear I make is probably gonna be the thing that fails first. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and make those tires and make those gears. Up until this point, everything's been easy mode, but I really have no idea how I'm going to attach wooden wheels to these hexes. Stock wheels attach by sandwiching a thin piece of plastic between the hex itself and the wheel nut. And even though this wood is pretty strong, when you make it that thin, I don't think that's going to work. We've also got multiple layers to deal with here, and I'm going to have to think about this for a few minutes. I think the spur gear, while least likely to succeed, is probably going to be a little bit easier to design. Though not by any means simple, there is a big problem with putting a gear on this center diff. We could just cut out a wooden gear and bolt it to the differential itself, and that probably would work, but the bearing also attaches to this gear, and we simply can't make that feature out of wood. So here's what I'm thinking. We take this spool that has a much smaller gear on it, and we design a piece of wood that presses onto this gear, and then has the shape of this gear on the outside. Obviously, this wouldn't work long term, but I also don't think a wooden gear is going to last very long, and if it does, we could always redesign it for a more long-term solution. In order to do this, I'm just going to go back into Fusion 360. They have a gear designer. I'm going to create the smaller gear in mod 1, then create the larger gear in mod 1, subtract one from the other, and then we can go ahead and cut a prototype out of paper on the Falcon 2 Pro. And here we go. Again, the beauty of prototyping in paper is it takes about 10 seconds to do, and you can really prototype quickly. As you can see, this does fit on here, and the gear profile looks pretty good. Looks like the mod 1 setting worked perfectly. However, it feels a little bit loose on here, and we want it to be a press fit. So I'm going to go ahead and go into CAD and reduce the size of the inner gear a little bit. And about 10 seconds later, we've lasered out another prototype. And this one feels just about perfect. It does feel like a little bit of a tight fit. The fit's always going to be a little bit looser with paper because it has more flex in it than something like wood will. So I think we should go ahead and try cutting this out of wood. I've loaded the file into Lightburn. Let's get this cut out. And here it is. Pushing this on the gear, it does have a nice snug fit. And look at that. We have got a wooden spur gear. I don't think this is going to last very long, but you know what? We're going to find out. And while we were working on that, I had an idea for attaching the wheel. I don't think there's any way we're going to be able to use a nut, but this hex is held on by a cross pin. What if we just take a longer pin and then use this to hold the wheel on? We could take advantage of the fact that we need multiple layers by putting one layer behind the pin, put the pin through, and then use another layer to sandwich that pin in. We could then use screws through all the layers to squish it all together. Now again, I have no idea if any of this is going to work, but let's go ahead and get it cut out, and I guess we're going to find out. While this is being cut, I want to let you know later in the video, I'm going to be asking you a serious question that both relates to the giveaway and the future of this channel, so make sure you stay tuned to help me out with that. While that finishes cutting, let's go ahead and get this wooden gear installed. I went ahead and put a little super glue between it and the steel gear. Again, I have no idea how long this is going to last, but if nothing else, we are experiencing a bunch of world's firsts together. I mean, come on, where else are you guys gonna see a wooden spur gear sticking through a wooden chassis on an Arrma Kraton? If you're excited to see how long this thing lasts, now might be a good time to try that hype button I've been hearing about. And speaking of hype, now it's time to try the part I'm most excited about, these wooden wheels. First, we put the layer with the hex on. Then in theory, we slide this long pin through. Might need a little persuasion. Just like that, as you can see, that holds this piece on. And then when we put the piece over it, it's gonna sandwich that pin. And we just add one more layer for thickness, and we bolt it all together. And there we go, guys. This feels pretty darn solid. Let me get the rest of them put on. And it's finally time to see what this thing can do. I think the wheels look really, really awesome. I'm expecting the spur gear to break pretty much immediately, so we're gonna be really careful. Oh, and what's this? That's just the synchro one of you guys is gonna be winning in this video. Tell you more about that in just a minute. But first, let's start out really, really slowly and see if this spur gear can handle anything at all. All right, here we go, nice and slow. Okay, well, it can move. Don't forget, we've got a wooden spur gear on this thing. It hasn't destroyed itself yet. I expect the first full trigger pull is going to destroy it. So we're gonna drive nice and slow, see if we can't get a little bit of a jump out of it before it dies. The wheels seem to be digging in nicely, getting good traction. Oops. Okay, we had a little bit of wheel spin there, and it's still holding up. I'm actually kind of surprised the spur gear hasn't died yet. Let's give it a little bit more throttle. Still holding up. Still moving. I bet that spur gear's getting chewed up pretty quickly. Let's get a little bit bigger jump. There we go, and it hasn't stripped yet. I'm actually really surprised. I was expecting the spur gear to strip essentially right away. Let's give it a little bit more throttle. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of shocked here, guys. I cannot believe this thing's still moving. I don't expect it to keep moving for too much longer, but yeah, wheels are still spinning, and we are running a wooden spur 6S, and I think we might have broken it. Nope, she's still going. Okay, let's get some real speed on it then. I am totally shocked this spur gear is lasting this long. I genuinely expected it to break immediately. A little bit more of a jump. I think oh, there we go. Well, the car definitely smells like cooked wood now. Let's take a closer look at the differential. While I take this apart to swap the steel differential back in, let me tell you how to win that synchro and tell you what I need help with. In the last video, there were 2,200 comments so far. At this point in the channel's growth, I just can't answer every single comment anymore and focus completely on making new awesome content for you guys. So in order to win that synchro, I want you to be subscribed, hit that thumbs up, maybe hype the video, and then let me know down in the comments if you want me to focus my energy on continuing to answer every single comment, or if you'd rather I focus more energy on bringing you as much content as possible. All right, this gear is completely cooked. That's not a surprise. But we've got a lot more wood to test, so let's get the standard differential back in. And while I'm putting this in, I want to let you know that I really do want to keep answering all of your comments, but answering every single comment really is taking away my energy from bringing you guys awesome content. So what I propose is a compromise. How about I focus on answering comments where you guys are actually asking me questions, as opposed to trying to answer every single comment that's just you guys loving the video or liking the channel, which I really do appreciate, by the way. I think that's a good compromise, but again, let me know down in these comments what you think, and that'll also get you entered for a chance to win that Creality Synchro. All right, with the steel differential back in, let's go see how the rest of this wood holds up to some real bashing. And don't forget, we're still running on wood wheels, a wood shock tower, wood brace, and a wood chassis. Let's see what kind of jump we can get out of this thing. Okay, not a lot of grip out of those wheels. That's not terribly surprising. So we're gonna need to get a little bit more speed up. We also don't have a lot of wheel control with it, so there's not a ton of air control, but it's really tearing up that grass, which looks cool. There we go, nice little jump. Little front ender there. Shock tower seems like it's still doing fine. Without having larger wheels on here, the air control and traction aren't great, but oh, that was right on one of the wheels. Did it break? The wheel didn't break, but we spit out the rear center drive shaft. And that's because we snapped the back of the chassis right off. That spells the end of the bashing, but how about we send off these wheels with some front wheel drive concrete burnouts? Yeah, it does not handle very well front wheel drive on these tires. Yeah, she's sliding around good though. Full throttle. She's wearing those tires down really fast. Oh, she's about to get stuck. Let's see what it looks like. And just about worn down to nothing. All right, guys, let's debrief. But before we talk about my wood, let's talk about that laser cutter. I've run probably a half a dozen different laser cutters over the years, and this one is my favorite. Between the enclosure that you get with it, the drawer that holds all the bits that fall out, the built-in camera, and everything else you get, this is the best laser cutter you can buy as far as I'm concerned. Of course, a laser cutter like this isn't going to be for everyone. This is a 40-watt model, and they aren't cheap. There are cheaper models available, though, and you can do many of the same same things you saw in this video, including cutting a bunch of other stuff and engraving things I didn't even show. Ultimately though, this is a good laser cutter. I really enjoy it. Now let's talk about the wood Kraton. Is wood stronger than steel? Of course not. Pound for pound, really high quality plywood like this is stronger because it's very, very light. But in ultimate tensile strength, obviously steel and even aluminum's going to be better. And that's proven by the fact that we ripped this chassis in half on the first bad landing. Obviously, I could make this chassis quite a bit wider, but I wanted a one-to-one comparison, and this was its weakest point. Now, speaking of point, what was the point of making this video? The point was, as always, just to have some fun. None of this was serious, none of this was scientific, it was just a bit of fun. I really enjoyed having fun with you guys in the video. Make sure you let me know down in the comments what you think about me replying to comments versus making content. That'll get you entered to win that Creality Synchro. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in one of these videos.